Second oral question, Lord Moylan.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, the Government committed to reviewing and refreshing the IPP action plan in line with the recommendation of the Justice Select Committee IPP report. HM Prison and Probation Service is currently finalising what the action plan should prioritise, the governance needed to oversee its delivery, and how progress will be tracked. The revised action plan will be published by the end of this month, by the 31st of March 2023.
My Lords, the recall of prisoners on licence is crucial to this. Last year was the first year in which the number of prisoners actually in jail increased since the sentence was abolished in 2012 because of recall. In late 2021, the Government produced figures that appeared to show that the numbers, because of recall, the numbers in prison at the end in 2025 would have risen by 2,600. Could my noble friend say if the Government still stands by those projections?
My Lords, broadly speaking, in order of magnitude terms, the projections remain the same, but it's important to note that those figures to which my noble friend refers do not include the re-release of previously recalled prisoners. So in the latest available published statistics for the latest available year, there were 214 IPP prisoners on their first release. There were 458 re-released prisoners who'd previously been recalled but are now being re-released, and 622 recalls. So I'm not sure that I would accept the premise that the prison population is actually increasing.
My Lords, in relation to the action plan, and I commend the noble Lord Moylan for his tenacity on this, one simple way of helping to reduce numbers and to free those on licence from what is quite often seen as a tyrannical regime is to actually implement the amendment, small amendment, agreed in this House on the Police and Crime Sentencing and Courts Act, which was automatic referral at 10 years on licence. That is not currently being implemented. I'd be really grateful if the noble Lord would go back and take a look with the Probation Service at why not.
My Lords, that provision, as far as I'm aware, should be implemented, and if it's not, that's a matter I shall investigate and revert to your Lordships.
My Lords.
Recognising the need for public protection, my question relates to the IPP prisoners who are now detained for 10, 12, 14 years beyond their tariff terms, beyond the punishment they deserve for their offending, and that's because they can't prove to the parole board that they can be released without any risk of reoffending, a proof which the noble Lord Clark of Nottingham, when he abolished this sentence in 2012, described as almost impossible. Does the government think that is just? And if so, will they continue to think it just, however many years may pass after 15, 20, 25 years, or do they recognise there'll come a point at which so when it's unjust?
Yeah.
In response to the noble and learned Lord, I can say we started with 6,000 offenders in this category. We now have 1,400 who have never been released. Why not? Because the parole board considers they are a risk to public protection. They have been reviewed in many cases several times, and that's why they're still there. We've got a further 1,500 who've been released, but they've been recalled for various reasons. But they too are eligible now for re-release.
My Lords.
My Lords.
Thank you. My Lords, it's well over 10 years now since I abolished indeterminate sentences with full cross-party support including the vocal support of Lord Blunkett, the Home Secretary who'd introduced them, because we both agreed that they were being used on a scale in a way that had never been intended and never contemplated by Parliament. We never imagined that over 10 years later we'd find over 1,000 people were still serving these sentences, many of them way beyond any minimum sentence that the judge may have recommended when imposing it. Following the last question, I made the mistake of assuming that Parole Board would steadily release all of them when the time was right, but I made the mistake also of making it the burden of proof on the prisoner to prove there was no danger. That has failed, and there's no point in still defending it. The government's already rejected re-sentencing of all the offenders involved. Can he assure me the plan that's about to be produced will definitely bring an end to the indeterminate, timeless detention of people for whatever crime, some of them sometimes quite minor, and replace it with a wholly new sentencing method if there are some of these people who would be a danger if released?
My Lords, in response to the noble Lord, the government is well aware of the difficulties of this situation. The government's approach to the present problem is that we cannot contemplate the automatic release of many of these prisoners that a resentencing exercise would involve. What we can do is better prepare them for release, especially with regard to mental health problems, and better look after them, in inverted commas, in the community when they are released, so they're not available for recall. In that way, the government hopes these figures will be substantially reduced.
My Lords, I too pay tribute to the noble Lord Molan for his tenacity on the issue. But the reality is that this group of prisoners is becoming ever more difficult to deal with. They have higher mental health problems, higher self-harming, higher suicide rates, and higher recall rates. This is the reality of what the prison service is dealing with. So can the noble Lord the Minister assure the House that there will be specialist training for probation officers to deal with these prisoners, for mental health workers to understand them, to try and reduce the recall rates when they are released?
Well, Lords, I can give that assurance. The problem is acute. It gets more difficult as time passes, and the need for specialised training and proper attention to these matters is growing. The action plan will include a special supervisory board with specific responsibility for IPP prisoners with a view to tackling this very difficult problem.
My Lords, in concert with all who've spoken, I suggest that the continued detention of so many IPP prisoners beyond their tariffs shames the criminal justice system. We've been round this course so many times, but does not the government now appreciate that their lack of progress on this betrays a complete inconsistency? On the one hand, they agree that the abolition of IPP sentences under LASPO should have happened because continued preventive detention for prisoners who'd served their time could not be justified. Yet on the other, they maintain and defend such a system in failing to release almost 3,000 of those prisoners, including those who've been released once, sentenced before LASPO, 10 years after those sentences were abolished.
Well, Lords, the then government decided that the abolition of the IPP sentence should not be retrospective. The existing IPP action plan has had a certain degree of success, and the revised IPP action plan will, we hope, fully address the problem.
This side. This side. This side. This side. This side. This side.
My Lords, to clarify the situation, are the numbers rising or getting less in each category?
My Lords, it is the turn of the Labour benches.
Do it again.
Do it again.
Of the Labour benches.
My Lords, to simplify the situation and make it abundantly clear, Are the numbers rising or lowering in each category?
Good question.
Well, I'm not completely sure I entirely understood your Lordship's question.
Well, excuse me, my Lords, what I want to know, are the numbers of these prisoners rising or lowering in each category?
They are currently, in broad terms, about the same. We've got 1,400 who have never been released. We've got 1,500, roughly speaking, on licence. We are releasing, including re-releases, about 600 a year, and recalls are running at slightly less than that.
Third oral question, Lord Bird.